Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. So this is volume 3 of my favourite film scenes. If you're enjoying these videos so far, please don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe and have a notification bell ticked every single time I upload a video. It would mean the world to me and I absolutely would appreciate it. So we're going to move on to films in volume 3. So once again, a spoiler disclaimer that it will contain them. So we don't say you haven't been warned, so let's go. Now, you can't talk about authentic scenes in cinema without talking about Steven Spielberg's epic World War II hit, Saving Private Ryan. Set during the invasion of Normandy, aka D-Day, we see a mass army of American soldiers coming from the English Channel in an untimely attack on German troops to regain the Normandy region for the Allied forces. This real-life incident played a significant part in World War II and sadly was at the expensive cost of thousands of lives lost. Over the years, battles in the war genre have been theatrical, where they've either exaggerated the storylines or even the violence for more dramatic effect. Now, while Saving Private Ryan certainly does create dramatic effect, it creates something that's the most authentic and realistic and gritty than any action sequence in a war film that I've probably ever seen in my life, and probably in most people's opinion as well. I don't think any wartime scene could recreate history as close as Saving Private Ryan's opening scene did to the Battle of Normandy. Obviously there are cinematic elements that exaggerate certain characterizations in the film, like for example the slow motion perspective focusing on Miller's surroundings, but it's particularly the detail that went into it, such as the dialogue between the characters, the actions, and also the peril of the situation that creates that realistic tone. Because you see various different camera shots, particularly like point of view, when they're in the water, when they're going towards the shore. You know, that's what life as a soldier was like then. You're able to kind of understand it from that perspective. You have some music that builds up the emotion, but just the way the camera is framed and the certain ways that the film's edited, it just works really, really well in terms of the catastrophe of the people who were blown up as soon as they arrived on the shore, people who were shot in the water, and all those things, and just the surroundings of war. And I don't think any sequence in history, in film history, that could possibly recreate anything as gritty, as realistic, as violent, and as heartbreaking as this sequence did in Saving Private Ryan. And that's what I think is so special about the film in general, because it didn't have that theatrical aspect to creating war. It was about creating character through action, not creating action with characters in it. So it was more about the impact of the war. Because the story is so simple in many respects, because it's only a small snippet of such a massive, massive conflict that was World War II. Because this mission is so small and such a tiny part of it, we were able to go deeper into what realistic tone we can go watch it in and how it could be done. And that's what I think the opening sequence justifies, because it did create that. And because this sequence lasted for a good while, at least 20 to 40 minutes, it was a very, very long opening sequence. It almost immediately hooked the audience in straight away. And I think that's what's particularly special about that opening part. Because when you watch a war film, yes, you're going to see loads of guns, you're going to see explosions, you're going to possibly see death. It does all that into one, but there's just more significance to it than anything else, because it's about loss, it's about catastrophe, having the courage to fight back. And I think it would be interesting to see a video comparison between this opening sequence from Saving Private Ryan and actual live raw footage of D-Day / the invasion of Normandy. And it would just be interesting to see how close they really are. And what I truly love about this particular sequence is the fact that when you think about cinema, you think it's fake, you think it's unrealistic, you think it's theatrical, it's just telling a story. But when you watch Saving Private Ryan and you watch this opening scene, it creates something that's bigger than that. It creates a whole bigger picture, that it actually really is war in front of your face. This was a war that really happened, but it feels like you're watching the actual war in front of your eyes because of how gritty and how real it is. Of course, it's a credit to those who were making the film. Again, another one that's among the best opening scenes of all time, and probably my favourite Steven Spielberg scene ever. It's amazing. So Saving Private Ryan, watch it, it's absolutely fantastic. Wow, who'd have thunk it? Second Steven Spielberg film in a row, both set during the Second World War, but in a totally different capacity. On the subject of realistically depicting history, this is another one that does it, but just in a different way. It may not be action-based, but it is in terms of drama and creating that heartbreaking and emotional effect to give us that reaction of what life was like for people during the Holocaust at that time. And what better scene to show than the heartbreaking and devastating "whoever saves one life saves the world" entire scene. The fact it was filmed in black and white already ticked a few boxes in creating that docudrama feel, but this scene absolutely represents the value of life, no matter what background you're from, and the greatest thing that Oskar Schindler did in saving those Jews from peril and getting killed. But what I love the most about this scene is Schindler's selflessness. In what's already an emotional scene anyway, having triumphed in the war, Schindler acknowledged the Jews' gratitude towards him by presenting him a ring which says, "Whoever saves one life saves the world entire." But all he could think about was what he could have done more of. He felt like the 1,100 Jews that he saved wasn't enough. He feels like he could have saved more and more and more, and he's just racked with guilt. He wasn't thinking about himself, he was thinking about other people, what he could have done more to help them. And being a former Nazi, that's saying something, and that's an absolute credit to who the real Oskar Schindler was. And the most significant part of it is the symbolism between objects and human life. Like when Schindler thinks about the people who he could have saved, the thousands of people he could have saved, he just valued one person, or 10 people, or 20 people. He thinks about the value of 10 people and even the value of one person. And he acknowledges that in this scene when he talks about the car.
God would have bought this car. Why did I keep the car? 10 people right there.
And even getting rid of his Nazi pin, which is probably a last piece of Nazi Germany in him and on him that he could have got rid of in exchange for a Jewish life.
2 more people. He would have given me 2 for, at least 1. He would have given me 1 more.
So he had a sense of guilt that he could have sold everything to get loads more Jewish people to safety. He was only capable of saving that amount of people, and the fact he managed to achieve this by presenting the Jewish community with more generations over the years. That particular scene when he is breaking down and he's getting upset and emotional because he felt like he couldn't, because he felt like he could have done better and could have done more. It just goes to show, in the Holocaust at the time, it was easier to give away life than it probably was to give an object away, and that's what's so heartbreaking. It's just a very, very, devastating scene, and just how it was done, the acting from Liam Neeson. Honestly, Tom Hanks is probably my favourite actor of all time. How Liam Neeson didn't win an Oscar for Schindler's List, I do not know. He should have won for that. I mean, the music from John Williams, amazing. Schindler's List is one of those films that I think is just perfect in literally every single way. You just can't find a single fault with it. Just the narrative, the acting, the directing, the cinematography, the music, the symbolism. The symbolism is just overwhelming. Probably the most unique symbolism in any film ever. It's just overwhelming, it's amazing. It's just an absolutely perfect film. It really, really is. And this particular scene absolutely justifies those perfections. So, the next film. So as most people know already, I'm a massive, massive Star Wars fan. And I made a rule as part of these videos that I'm only going to choose one scene from one film or one series. Even though I could talk about loads and loads of Star Wars scenes, because a lot of them are among my favourite scenes ever, but because I've chosen to do one, I've particularly highlighted Vader's redemption as the greatest Star Wars scene, at least. I mean, if there's any cinematic moment in history that I could either relive all over again and watch in the cinema, or I wish that I could be alive to see, it would be this scene. Taking place in what's already an intense sequence between Vader and Luke, having learned that they are actually father and son. The entire sequence is Vader battling with his own conscience and Luke's own resilience to not be submissive in terms of turning to the dark side, like Vader did. Because Vader was once a powerful Jedi Knight who turned to the dark side, as shown in Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. While it was indeed a very powerful and exciting battle between Luke and Vader, it was the aftermath that was particularly intriguing. I'd even go as far as to say that although I praise every single scene that I've mentioned in this video and all the other volumes in this little mini-series, I would probably say that this sequence with Vader, Luke and the Emperor is probably my favourite scene of all time. I've mentioned every single scene is brilliant. This scene stands out as the number one because it gave me so many different reactions that it was just overwhelming as a viewer to comprehend. You felt emotional, you felt excited, you felt happy and cheerful, you felt devastated as well. So you felt all these different emotions, only from a character who just had a mask on. You felt the emotion that Vader was feeling from his body language, and the way the camera was positioned, and the music, and just the entire situation with the Emperor casting his Force lightning on Luke while Vader's watching helplessly, battling with himself. You just felt so much connection to a character that you could actually see what he was thinking. And it just goes to show, in films sometimes it's not about dialogue, it's how it's done. When you watch this film again after watching the prequels, you not only think about his general emotions, but you think about his memories as well. Padme, when he force choked her, when he found out that he was going to be a father, when he had his first training with Obi-Wan, when he first met Qui-Gon, when he started to fall to the dark side, when he killed those Tusken Raiders. All those different memories are relevant now to this particular scene, even though before the prequels came out, you could just imagine it for yourself of what he's going to do, and watching the Emperor and watching Luke. He eventually does toss the Emperor down to his death. Well, at least until Rise of Skywalker was released, and then it was completely undone, but never mind. And again, in terms of the audience reaction, after building up the tension and when he eventually did that, I just cannot imagine the atmosphere of the cinema in 1983 when this came out. I think it was probably the first time when an auditorium, a normal theatre, turned into a sports stadium. You probably had people on their feet cheering, going, yes, 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 yes. Just before that thinking, God, do something, come on man, do something, don't just stand there, do something. I mean, I normally don't like people who react in a way where they're kind of going, yes, yes, yes. You know, like they're at a concert or they're watching a football match or something. But when you are that enticed into a character, into a certain scenario, you feel like sometimes you just have to respond in such a cheery kind of way, like they're actually in front of you, not on a screen, just physically there. And I said earlier in Volume 1 about Avengers Endgame, where people were cheering when he said Avengers Assemble, and I think that's a particularly crucial point, and that's another factor as to why I would say that this scene is probably my favourite scene in cinema history. It's the GOAT, as far as I'm concerned. It really is, it's brilliant. And it's just a shame that in the end it counted for nothing, because Emperor Palpatine somehow, weirdly, came back in episode 9, so yeah, it counted for nothing. But anyway, the last film on this volume, let's go. One of the most popular and, in my opinion, ingenious 21st century films that kind of went beyond anybody's expectations was The Dark Knight. As a film, it went down a totally different route than any other comic book that we've probably ever seen before. While we've had previous Batman adaptations where they've been a lot more comical and a lot more theatrical, director Christopher Nolan gives us a bit more of a realistic and grittier tone to the Batman character and his surroundings. And the central core of the film is Batman questioning his own moralities as the superhero by the film's actual villain, which of course is the Joker, played by the late and great Heath Ledger. So the interrogation scene begins after the Joker is captured and he starts getting interrogated by Gordon and Batman. So it seems like they have caught the Joker, but there's a unique twist, because in a way, the Joker's almost caught them, because he starts unravelling different little things about the situation, especially when it comes to Harvey Dent, which actually is a revelation that he never actually returned home that night when the Joker was captured. So there's something not quite right. So the tables are turning on the heroes now, even though it's the Joker that's in captivity. And just the lighting immediately does it for me, because when he's in the room with Commissioner Gordon, it's pitch black. The only bit of light that you see is you see the light on the Joker's face, and then when Commissioner Gordon leaves, the light immediately comes on and then Batman emerges, which is interesting because the Batman only appears in the dark, but he appears in light there. Even though it's set at night, he appears in the light to interrogate the Joker. So there's some kind of unique twist in terms of the Batman character and the way the film's lit. And then, of course, when they're sitting down at the table, they're kind of talking to each other about each other's own moralities and motives for what they do in life. And they question things about society as well, especially the Joker when he says,
when the chips are down, these civilized people, they'll eat each other.
And that there is a sense of animalistic instinct in everybody. That's what he argues, that's his philosophy. So it's a game of interrogation where Gordon and Batman are trying to get the Joker to tell them where Harvey Dent is, but gradually it becomes the other way around, despite the Joker's the one who's in captivity. The dialogue's just incredible, and it's pinnacle to the situation and the character arcs, which in some ways question our own selves within society. And the fact that the Joker has absolutely zero context to his own character, but it's because of that lack of context that it makes the Joker a more terrifying character, yet an ingenious one at the same time. Batman eventually loses his composure with the Joker and eventually hoists him up against the wall and threatens him, and then Joker has another revelation that he's actually kidnapped somebody else. someone else closer to Batman. So in a way, I would say in general that the Joker actually does break Batman mentally. And when you watch this particular sequence, it's uncomfortable because everyone knows Batman as this, you know, unstoppable superhero, but yet he's appeared probably the most vulnerable ever. Superheroes do have flaws, superheroes do have faults, and they are mortal, basically. And even the physical interrogation as well, when he grabs his neck and throws him against the wall and then he ends up punching him. And that little fact about that, Heath Ledger actually asked Christian Bale to punch him. And it just created that more authentic reaction, not just on Heath Ledger's performance, but the situation between the Joker character and Batman. And that's why the Joker just cackled. Because Batman is powerless, because he can't kill him, it's not in his moral, and he's got nothing among him to threaten him with that will interrogate him or intimidate him. And the Joker truly did break Batman, and Heath Ledger's performance was just beyond anything that we've ever seen before in cinema history. He was just so free to that performance, and it was totally different than anything he ever did before he sadly died in 2008. And this scene in The Dark Knight is crucial and fundamental to how a lot of films now, after the film came out, where the villain turns it onto the hero, where either in a particular scene or in the end of the film, the villain wins. Still, that scene from The Dark Knight is one of the most genius and creative scenes of the 21st century in terms of character arcs, in terms of cinematography, and in terms of pacing, and in terms of narrative twists. And that can only be a credit to the actors Heath Ledger and Christian Bale, director Christopher Nolan, and all production crew members. And The Dark Knight was a breakthrough in the comic book genre. It's just a shame it didn't win any more Oscars than it thoroughly deserved. So that's 3 volumes down and 1 more to go. If you are enjoying these videos, it would mean the world to me if you could please hit that like button and subscribe, and have a notification bell ticked for every single time I upload a video. And I'll catch you in the 4th and final one.